Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and good morning, Dr. Bernie. Welcome you all to the 7th session of webinar series of ELTAI. The topic of today's webinar is Challenges Facing Higher Education Post-COVID-19 Year. The moderator of today's session is Dr. Yusuf Mehdi, Assistant Professor of English, Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology. And amongst the panelists, we have three. One is Dr. Bernie from Rainerson from USA, Professor Atanu Bhattacharya from Central University of Gujarat, and Dr. Neeru Tandon from VSSD College, Kanpur. I'll briefly talk about our moderator, Dr. Yusuf Mehdi, and then talk briefly about ELTAI and the benefits of joining ELTAI for those of you who are not members of ELTAI. Dr. Yusuf Mehdi heads the Cambridge Assessment Center at Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology. Previously, he worked at different positions as Vice President Training in Maxwell Private Limited. He was Chair, Center for Creativity and Innovation, worked as Assistant Professor in King Saud University, Saudi Arabia, has done CELTA from Cambridge University Press, is published nationally and internationally, is on the editorial board of many journals, and prominently his work and interest areas are into English language teaching. About ELTAI, many of you may probably know, and for those who are new or probably do not know much about ELTAI, I'll just briefly tell you what ELTAI is. ELTAI is the English Language Teachers Association of India, which is one of the oldest associations of teachers in India, with more than 50 chapters all across the country. ELTAI has MOUs with almost all Asian teachers associations. It also has MOU with BCT Canada and Cambridge University Press. ELTAI works with the objective of providing forum to teachers.
Sorry, sir, we can't hear anything. The sound is a problem.
Okay. Okay. Is it better now? Okay. So ELTAI works with the objective of promoting development programs, providing consultancy, research and experimentation, and professional support. We also give various, we have the professional development programs that we come up with, and various educational institutions provides professional support. And to members, we offer sponsorship for e-courses and for various other conferences, national and international conferences. Members also get free subscription of bi-monthly journal. And also they get a free subscription of special interest groups, business English, literature, and computer technology. Members also have possibility of getting their articles published in our journal, and they also get subsidized subscription of IEEE journal from UK and TESOL from USA. So with this brief introduction, before I pass it on to Dr. Mehdi, I would request all the participants to ask their questions in the chat box with the name of the panelist written, so that we get to know whom the question is directed to. So with this, I pass it on to you, Dr. Mehdi. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Arora, for the introduction. I really appreciate it. Greetings to all. I would like to welcome the distinguished speakers and participants to the 7th session of the ELTAI Web Series 2020. The topic for today's discussion is Challenges Facing the Higher Education Post-COVID-19 Era. This is the time when the whole world is facing the COVID-19 crisis and trying to figure out ways to cope with the situation. The crisis has shaken up each sector, and the education sector is no exception. The educational institutions have been forced to devise ways and means of grappling with the pandemic. We need to understand the global perspective too, in order to be able to formulate global best practices for higher education. The digital readiness of our higher education institutions is also an area of consideration. Today's session is an attempt to deliberate on these very pertinent issues and find out ways to maintain the effectiveness of education imparted even during the lockdown. To ponder upon and discuss the challenges faced by the higher education sector today and possible ways to overcome these challenges, we have with us very experienced speakers from the industry and the academia who will share their perspectives and experience with us. I will take this opportunity to introduce the speakers for today's panel discussion now. The first panelist today is Professor Atanu Bhattacharya. Professor Bhattacharya is Dean, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies at the Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar. He completed his studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and the University of Warwick, United Kingdom. His research interests are technology, English language and culture studies, and their interactions with pedagogy. His current research interests are specifically in the area of Bengali science fiction as it developed during the 19th century in and around the city of Kolkata. He is at present working on a book project on science fiction in colonial spaces, as well as one on ICT and language education. He is an amateur theater enthusiast and in his pastime tries to write plays. Then we have with us Dr. Neeru Tandon, Associate Professor at VSSD College, Kanpur. Dr. Tandon is a writer, critic, poet, teacher, teacher trainer, feminist, social worker, researcher, and a law graduate who has skillfully designed and produced material for course books, competitive exams, creative writing, newsletters, brochures, and flyers. She has also authored first-rate critical essays and articles for publication in print and online, and is popularly known as enthusiastic, creative, and focused writer, adept at details and producing only first-rate work with tremendous integrity and common sense. Dr. Tandon possesses 30 years of comprehensive and thorough teaching expertise in UG and PG courses. She treats teaching profession like her religion and pursues the same with passion and vigor every single day. She is a highly energetic individual with positive thinking and confidence and possesses exceptional writing skills. Apart from this, she also contributes to the social welfare in significant ways. She has a strong advocacy backing for feminism, which is reflected in various articles and books written and published by her. She also writes poems, contributing immensely to the literature, particularly in the field of Indian English literature. Violence against women, feminine psyche, feminism, and Indian English drama are among the various issues taken up by her. She is the first ever and only D.Lit in English from Kanpur University and has written 21 books and 45 research papers. She has more than 100 lectures on YouTube related to English literature, language, and linguistics, recorded specially for an MHRD project. She successfully completed a certificate course from University of Illinois, United States on e-learning ecologies. The third panelist is Mr. Bernie Reinerson, who will be putting forth the global perspective on the subject. Mr. Reinerson is a marketing consultant and public education advocate in the United States of America. Currently, he is committed to the big job of advocating for public education in California and on the national level through his work as a board trustee of the San Diego Community College District and as a board member of the Association of Community College Trustees. He also enjoys opportunities to work as a marketing consultant for technology companies serving the K-12 marketplace. He's also passionate about his service to the Cesar Chavez service clubs and after-school program building leadership skills for inner city students in more than 20 schools in the San Diego area. I once again welcome all of you to today's session. Now, without any further ado, I would commence the discussion. Let's start with knowing the global perspective first. Mr. Bernie Reinerson, my first question is for you. Could you let us know how this COVID-19 is impacting higher education in the United States?
Well, good evening, everybody. First of all, it's a great honor to be with all of you from the United States today. As Joseph has indicated, I'm a board trustee of the San Diego Community College District. We have 3 colleges and over 100,000 students and are part of the community college system in the United States that serves about 20% of all college students. California alone is about 2 million community college students, which are 2-year colleges, leading students to 4-year degrees and beyond. The COVID-19 crisis has had a dramatic impact on higher education throughout the United States. What we faced is having to close down colleges, send students home, and move all of instruction to an online mode in a matter of 2 weeks during the month of March. That was a huge undertaking, and our colleges remain closed at this date. Looking forward, we expect that our summer school classes will still be online, and colleges throughout the United States are still trying to plan what to do in the fall. Our system in California, the California Community College System, and our universities have already decided to remain online with online instruction throughout the fall. So we don't expect to be opening up our campuses anytime soon. What we've undertaken is moving thousands of classes in my institutions alone to online, which was a huge undertaking. It was costly. It cost my colleges more than $6 million to make that transition. Those are dollars that we don't have. So we're looking at tremendous budget deficits. And it was a huge challenge for our faculty. But more importantly, it was a challenge for our students. Surveys have shown that about 20% of our students don't have access to Wi-Fi and computers. So it's been very difficult to transition to online education. And many students really just dropped off because of pressures of losing their jobs, of trying to handle their families. So overall, it's been a huge challenge, but we're doing well. We're making the transition, and we're trying to plan for positive and good instruction in the online mode for the coming months.
Well, thank you. Right. Most of the educational institutions have started these virtual classes to keep the students engaged. And very rightly mentioned by you that college engagement is not just classes, it's much more than that. Now, Dr. Tandon, my next question is for you. Mr. Reinerson just told us about the impact of this pandemic on the universities and colleges in the US. So I would like to know from you the major challenges the higher education in India would be facing because of the COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf, for this positive note that soon, like, we are going to have something like post-COVID, and we can take it as post-lockdown, what we mean during this. So we all know that COVID-19 has changed the way we teach and learn almost overnight in India. And I can think of 3 major challenges for the higher education institutions in India. First will be how to manage resistance to online education and to rethink their operating models and strategies. With 1,000 universities, 40,000 colleges, 14 lakh teachers, and 3,74 lakh registered students for higher education, we are going to start afresh during and post-crisis. With so many students not having adequate access to electricity, computers, and internet, dealing with overcrowded household and work at hand at the same time. So we'll have to really think our pedagogy. What will happen to vocational courses? What will happen to the emotional connect that is the main bond between teacher and student? Interestingly, because of COVID-19, most professors and students suddenly find themselves forced to use technology as they teach and learn. For some teachers, the transition to online sounds bizarre and not for us type, with some teaching unions blocking online teaching because they fear that eventually they might be substituted. My own university, Kanpur University Teachers Association, that has done that and wrote a letter to authorities not to force online education. But most of us know, like it or not, every faculty member is going to be delivering education online. Every student is going to be receiving education online. And the resistance to online education is going to go away as a practical matter. But how? This would be a challenge for policymakers and administrators. We should not forget that we have students of medical, law, fine arts, science, etc. They need practical one-to-one connection. Now, there are second challenge for most institutions involves cash flow. As institutions will have to face less admissions. Because as a student, when I can join Delhi University or BHU online, why should I go to VSSD college or any other local college for that matter? There will be almost no parking fee, no dining outlet sales, other auxiliary revenues. They also face unexpected expenses, including partial refunds on fees, room and board, and the need to scale virtual engagement modalities. Then institutions, they will have to spend on smart classes, more computers, recording centers, digital libraries, and upgrading of websites. Institutions will have to ensure that all students registered have access to these. Third challenge, that is my major concern, that is of quality control. There has simply been no time to rethink the pedagogy, to develop teaching material for online delivery, creating more smart classes or media centers, and to train professors to deliver online. Today, everybody is learning by doing. There is no check on the quality of the material being uploaded. No ISBN, no board of studies, nothing. And just last, one more challenge, how to keep students engaged, motivated, and in good mental health while they are sitting at home, having no sports, no music, no fine arts, no travel. Their concept of freedom and enjoyment of college life is going to be practically off. There are 5 common problems that I can think of: technical issues, computer literacy, time management, self-motivation, and adaptability struggle. I feel these are the most visible, immediate challenges for the institutions of higher education in India.
Okay. Well, so digital infrastructure, digital readiness of our institutions, and lack of funds are, of course, very vital issues in this regard. Thank you. Dr. Bhattacharya, the other two panelists talked about the digital mode of delivery of the course modules, which is quite evidently is the need of the hour. But how do you think we could support the teachers to raise their comfort and confidence level in such a short time, as they have already been pushed into offering courses online, and there might be some teachers who are not very well equipped to deal with the changed timeframes and teaching learning environment? What is your take on this?
Yeah, thank you, Yusuf. I think partially my fellow panelists have already talked about this, so I'm just not going to spend too much time on this because I think Mr. Reinerson and Dr. Tandon has already kind of touched upon the points, the challenges that we are going to face. So there are economic challenges, there are pedagogic challenges. But I'd like to talk about two things that specifically to teachers and what we have done. I've been a part of a project recently, just after the colleges started shutting down, and especially in the lockdown period when the whole of the country stopped having classes. It was interesting to see how teachers kind of transitioned from a face-to-face mode to an online mode. And we must appreciate them for that. I mean, they were given hardly 7 to 10 days to do that. So remember, in a country as massive as India, and I'm sure as massive as the US, you would take some time to transition from a face-to-face mode to an online mode. And in order to do that, you really need courage. And we must appreciate our teachers to do that. But as a part of the project, as I was telling you about, we saw that some interesting things started happening when people moved from the face-to-face mode or the traditional classroom modes to more online modes. And one of the interesting things that happened was that there was a transitioning of platform. For example, people moved from face, looking at children, looking at students and delivering their lecture, to Zoom and Google Classroom or to Microsoft Teams Meet or whatever, different sorts of programs. So there was a change in platform, but the pedagogic model kind of remained more or less the same. So it was more or less the model that was used in face-to-face interaction that moved on to Zoom. So the Zoom classes were, for example, still used as a kind of a face-to-face mode. Now, if you want to think of an equivalent, and I can think, because I think I'm old enough now to go back to those days when PowerPoint was first kind of introduced into the pedagogic systems. And what many early educators who moved on to PowerPoint, I still remember, would actually treat the PowerPoint as a kind of a blackboard. So the kind of things that they used to do on the blackboard or the whiteboard in the classrooms was more or less the same thing that they would do on the PowerPoint. So it was a kind of a display board for them. And they didn't think about the affordances of the PowerPoint, things that PowerPoint itself could do, because technology had those affordances which a traditional classroom might not have, just like the technology would not have the things that traditional classrooms would have. So this transitioning that we are seeing is, I think, a kind of a challenge that we need to address at some point of time or the other, because what we have seen, therefore, is a transitioning in terms of a change in platforms from the classroom to an online mode, but we have not really thought about the pedagogic principles that are involved in making this transition. So I think we need to think about that. So that's one of the greatest challenges that we're going to face. The second thing, I think, that which Dr. Townsend mentioned very briefly was something that Warsaw talked about a long time back. And he said that in order to make this transition, teachers will have to have at least 4 literacies. He called them 4 different kinds of literacies. You can call it competencies. And the 4 literacies that he talked about was computer literacy, which was basically a basic knowledge of programs in the computers, the software, the basic platforms available on computers. Information literacy, how do you access information, what information to trust, how do you treat that information, how do you transform that information into knowledge, etc. You need to have multimedia literacy because, of course, with modern technology, it's no more text-based, it's videos, images, etc. So how do you bring all those different forms of literacies together? And computer-mediated communication, because that is important, because the moment you transition from a classroom mode to an online mode, the nature of communication itself changes. And I think educational institutions, therefore, would need to develop both in-service programs for teachers, especially to make this transition, but also regular workshops and dissemination activities for students as well, because it's a kind of a two-way game. So you can't really stop just at teachers and move on to teachers as well. So I think that's how it needs to be done.
Okay, so transitioning is one of the major challenges today. And of course, I also believe the teachers are indeed the frontline warriors in the education sector, and their comfort with using a particular teaching mode is important. Mr. Reinerson, coming back to you, how ready do you think the higher education institutions in the United States are to cope with this pandemic?
Thank you, Yusuf. This pandemic took us by surprise. I think universities and colleges in the United States were not ready to cope with this. Who could have ever imagined that we would have to convert all of our courses to an online mode in a 2-week period? Our colleges in San Diego before the pandemic had about 17% of our classes were online. That means that more than 80% of our faculty were not teaching online, so they were not prepared. We also had a challenge for our digital infrastructure. We were not prepared in terms of our capacity to support the computer systems and the digital mode of education. So we had to invest in upgrading servers, invest in our IT system, and do that very, very quickly to support an entire college system going to an online mode. Our faculty also, that 80% of our faculty who didn't teach online and didn't have that experience, needed professional development and training. So we invested immediately in a lot of faculty development and workshops and training sessions for our faculty, but that's going to have to continue. Many universities in the United States actually have a position called an instructional designer, which is not a classroom teacher, but it is a teacher that is focused on helping faculty design a course, which is much more than a Zoom lecture and putting a lecture up there. It's doing assessments, it's doing laboratory experiments and things that you can demonstrate. And how do you put that together into a course to make it interesting and engaging for students? So we weren't prepared at this point in terms of faculty development. It's been a challenge for our digital infrastructure. And certainly, as I mentioned before, our students weren't prepared. At our colleges, we've actually purchased well over thousands of laptops. We invested over $1 million in the last month and a half to distribute laptops where students would be driving into the parking lots and receive a free laptop and be able to go home and study with that. So there were a lot of challenges, and I think we're still going to face those for months ahead. And as I mentioned, the funding challenges that we have will be an obstacle, but we're going to work through that in order to help our students continue to learn. Finally, I think we have a challenge of declining enrollment. Many students are trying to decide what to do in the fall, whether or not they should go away to college, to a residential college, or stay in their home area and maybe go to a local community college. So we may see a declining enrollment, which could complicate things. So we have challenges, but we're going to work through them, and hopefully we can give students what they need in the months ahead.
Okay. And Dr. Tandon, what would you suggest can be done to tackle the challenges put up by this pandemic?
Actually, it's a collective effort, of course, and post-lockdown, we expect to have some sort of normal, but not the same sort of normal, because from no phone inside the college to college is inside the phone is a journey. Good news is that there is a 5-fold increase in students joining online courses within a month. And in the last few weeks, higher education institutions, they have shown their significant capacity to adapt very quickly to the crisis with a lot of flexibility. Even in my college, Department of Law is conducting classes and other things online. That is something new for them. Post-lockdown era for universities may force online learning to become the new normal. This challenge can be faced with having extensive broadband access, reliable communication tools, user-friendly video conferencing, widespread smartphone adoption. That is something that is really going to help. And redesigning and reframing of syllabus is also required. Like some high-rated online courses are already available, and college and universities, they can use this as a new type of digital interactive textbook. E-books and books in PDF format, they should be included in syllabus. Since mobile phone penetration is higher than internet connectivity in India, so we should use that more. You may suggest your students to use apps for learning English, specifically English I'm talking, like Hello Talk, Hello English, Udemy, BBC Learning English, Speak It Right, Lingby, which has a language exchange system, Awabi, that helps you learn over 4,000 common phrases and vocabularies. I used to do it with some students. So there are so many, but my favorite apps, I can tell my friends who are joining this show that 3 apps you can tell your students to join first. That is Learn to Speak English, then English Conversation Practice, and Hello English. So another point is, while teachers need to put in intensive work and time to design the instruction, students, they also need to equip themselves with technical proficiency to decode this course material. And positive attitude, it's very, very important. So time to time motivational lectures and career guidance would help them to meet this challenge. Now, one more thing that I would like to share, that government is currently working on a new national education policy, and a draft version describes a significant role for online learning. According to ISRO, only India is the country that has the world's first dedicated educational satellite EduSat. So with that, government has already started. Government is reaching out to students through virtual classes on Doordarshan, All India Radio, cable TV, educational channels, and YouTube. IGNOU is also helping out through its Gyanvani. And they even places like Leh Ladakh and some remote villages who are devoid of internet or electricity, they are using 23 channels of All India Radio for education. So we are not going to start from the scratch. We already have InflipNet and CEC. They have uploaded 56,000 educational videos. Shodh Ganga has, we all know, 2,60,000 theses. We have 10,000 journals. We have 30 lakh ebooks on its portal. Swayam Prabha, we all know, it was launched in 2017. It is a dedicated effort of the government for e-learning, where already 1,57,000 students are registered, and more are registering themselves every day. So government has already spent a good 10,000 crore on such projects, and a huge budget should be allocated. So we already have EPG Pathshala, National Repository, and other things. So my dream is, I can say, one nation, one education. With this online learning, we can do that. Teething problems erupt with every initiation, and with foresight, one has to come forward. I just remember what Dylan Simpson said, just 4 lines: wounded and broken, but still we stand tall. No challenge too overbearing, and no fear too consuming. For each day is a battle. So I say, friends, let's fight, we shall overcome.
Okay, so even before this crisis struck us, we had already started building up our digital infrastructure. But digital mode of classes and virtual classrooms seem to be the only options as of now. Moving on to you, Dr. Bhattacharya, what, according to you, are the benefits of online learning for students and teachers?
Okay. Now, the jury is still out on that, Yusuf. The moment we say that there are benefits of online learning, we tend to kind of make it a comparative study. So we tend to say that online learning is better than other forms of learning or other kinds of learning available, which I think is, at least in terms of research studies, it has never been proven that way at all. So it's not really, we don't really know whether online education is better or whether classroom interaction is better, or is the blended mode better, etc. So we don't really know. So I have a particular position on this, and I feel that there is this scale in which we stand right now, especially in the COVID-19 situation that we are facing today. So on one part of the scale, you have people like Sugata Mitra, who advocate that students should be left alone. And we don't need teachers anymore because students should be left with internet and computers, and they would learn on their own because learning happens as a self-organized learning environment mode, what he calls the SOUL, self-organized learning environment. And he says, since learning is self-organized, therefore, we don't really need teachers in today's era of internet and computers. So he actually did a series of experiments. Many of you would be aware of this, which were known as hole-in-the-wall experiments over several countries and several areas in India, where he actually put up a computer and an internet in absolutely disadvantaged areas of Delhi and many other cities in India. where they would be put up in slums, extremely disadvantaged cities, parts of the cities, and 3 months, 4 months down the line, we know that children learned. According to him, that was learning more than a teacher teaching anything. So that's one part of the extreme scale. The other part, of course, you can have a Luddite, if you remember the 19th century famous Luddite movement, where every machine is bad, every technology is bad, where you can say that, well, we don't need technology anymore, the classroom interaction is much better. How does technology replace the actual teacher, etc.? So within this scale, we need to find some sort of kind of balance, I guess, where we need to place the benefits of online education. So we can't really close our eyes and say, well, online education is not going to stay anymore, it's going to disappear, etc. It is going to be there, and especially after the crisis that we are facing, we might move on to a more blended form of learning and teaching. I'm not very sure whether teachers actually hold a Luddite position, where teachers actually say, we don't need any technology, I can teach, I give me a class and I will do it. I don't think that's going to happen anymore after COVID has come in, because this blended mode is probably going to take over at some point of time. And though I know that there are experiments, as Mr. Ranison, I think he would be able to verify this. In US, for example, there have been experiments where people are saying we don't want any technology in the classroom. So you have walled off schools, for example, in Silicon Valley, where parents feel that since we are surrounded by technology, our children, what they do at home in terms of technology should not be what they should be doing in school. So they are sent to schools that there is no technology at all. But in the COVID-19 situation that we are facing today and the kind of things that we are forced to do even today, I think the benefits, if there are any, as I told you earlier, there are hardly any studies that have very clearly stated that online learning is much more beneficial than any other forms of learning. The benefits can be situated within this scale. So you can't take the extreme scale of Sugata Mitra and say, oh, we don't need teachers anymore, or we can't take the Luddite scale and say, we don't need any technology anymore. So we probably will have to settle the benefits somewhere in between, where we learn, technology aids us, helps us, provides us with affordances that we possibly can't do in a face-to-face situation, while there are certain things that technology cannot do, and probably, especially in language teaching, which is a social phenomenon, that probably needs a more blended approach. So I think it needs to be some sort of a balance in terms of benefits. So it is not always that online teaching is always more beneficial. I don't think that is always true.
Okay, well, whether online mode is better or the offline one is still a debatable issue, right? But it does open up a wide area of opportunities of self-learning for the students, I guess. Dr. Reinerson, I would now like to know from you as to how your students are adjusting to the closed campuses and totally online instruction.
Thank you. And I love the characterization that Atanu just gave about what we need to do is have something in between. We can't go total technology or total teachers without technology. In the United States, we've had surveys that show that only about 20% of our students across the country have ever taken an online course. So, and as I said, at our institution, only about 17% of our courses were online. So this is new for students, as it is new for most of our professors. In one survey that I saw, about 75% of the students that were surveyed in the United States said that they didn't think that they received the quality of learning in an online course that they got in an in-person course. So that is saying is what our students are feeling is that they also want a blend. They want that added opportunity to interact with the teacher, to have those discussions, the Socratic method of teaching, the back and forth discussions. What's also important that students lose in the total online mode, I think, is what really works for student success here in the United States is to have groups of students studying together, the cohort model of teaching, where students are experiencing courses and learning together and working together and having the opportunity to interact with their peers and also to interact with professors. A lot of that interaction gets lost when campuses are closed and it's total online learning at home. Trying to learn for our disadvantaged students who are in environments that are crowded and distracting, where they're also holding down a job and trying to work. Many of our students work full-time, they have families, they're single mothers, and then to ask them to find a place in their homes where they can focus on learning on a computer screen is a real challenge that our students face. Many of our students have lost those part-time jobs, those jobs that they have that have been funding their education during this economic crisis. So that's another challenge that we face. At the high school level, the exposure to online learning for our high school seniors is even less than in college. And recent surveys showed that about 67% of high school students were concerned about moving ahead into the college level and taking online courses and not really wanting to do that. So what we're seeing in our students is they're facing the challenges like we all are in this COVID crisis of economic challenges of trying to take care of their families and then trying to learn online at home and the challenges that they have in getting Wi-Fi and computers. And the fact that many of our students, this is new learning for them. So as I said before, it's a challenge for our colleges, but we also see great challenges for our students. Many of our students at our community college level are hungry. Many of them have difficulty they're homeless. And so we're trying to provide student supports for them also. So hopefully, as we work on this further, we'll have stronger student support to be able to help them. And the experience that our students gain will help them become better learners in the online mode. But my personal feeling is that the full college experience of being together, of learning together and interacting with professors is something that we ought to strive to return to after COVID-19.
Well, no doubt it's a challenge for the students also to adjust to the new learning environment. And there has always been a debate as to which is more effective, online mode of delivery or face-to-face classes. Well, as of now, blended approach is most probably the best suited. Dr. Tandon, what's your take on this? I mean, which mode of delivery, according to you, is more effective? And I would request you to respond to this question, keeping in mind the Indian higher education segment.
You can say that teachers, they are looking for ways to integrate technology via social media into assignments and assessment, have almost unlimited choices like Facebook, Twitter, Wiki, blogs. My students or our students, they are well versed with all these things. So there are some things like recently I had seen like they are using Twitter to learn history and creative writing. But when you say that which one is better for our student, so I'll say that online teaching is a student-centric education system. And studies done by IBM, they have found that participants learn 5 times more material in online learning courses using multimedia content than in the traditional face-to-face courses. And students who take all or part of their class online, they perform better. But only face-to-face instruction is not working these days. Even pre-crisis period also, we were using these things, but to the certain extent. I must confess that I've never fully understood the either or nature of technology-enabled learning versus face-to-face. It is not a transition from brick university to click university. So being in person with teachers and other students, it creates a social pressure. And it benefits that can help motivate students to engage. And online courses are certainly better than no classes, of course. And time demands a change. We seem to be moving towards blended learning after some time. but it is a fact that technology cannot replace a teacher. Students, they can use their precious time when they are there in the campus for certain things that is not possible online. And it will, but e-learning will change the way we know them today. Every institution will have to offer online and distance learning facilities. They must maintain chat rooms that facilitate discussions about the technology issues, course design, course delivery, and evaluation methods, of course. So all these things, like I feel that students are ready to change. It is time for the teachers to come forward and show that they can imbibe that change as well. Because I had seen that teachers are not ready to change the books only, that I have been teaching this one. So this is something that a great change is required, and they must come forward and they must just inspire students to imbibe that change, because we don't have option.
Okay, thank you. Well, Dr. Bhattacharya, the panelists just talked about some of the benefits of online teaching learning method and how the students are adjusting to the new setup. I would like to ask you about the problems which you think the teachers might face in respect to generating, modifying, and creating content to be delivered through virtual classes. And how can we support the teachers in this?
I think I have partially kind of answered this, and I think my fellow panelists have already answered some of these. So in my first response, I did talk about the 4 literacies that Warshar, for example, talks about. So you have the computer literacy, the information literacy, the multimedia literacy, and the computer-mediated communication that you need to have for any kind of a transitioning from face-to-face. And as Dr. Tandon has very correctly pointed out, that it's no more a question of transitioning anymore, because it's more how technology is a part of your life now, and you really can't deny it as a part of your teaching process, as a part of your learning process, etc. So even if personal use, when you Google or when you do a Facebook chat or when you do a Twitter hashtag, you are learning in some ways. So it has become such an intricate, it is imbricated in your own existence. So as a student, as a teacher, you are already a part of technology, and you really can't deny it. So probably one of the things that can help teachers to transition is to address the 4 literacies that Washaw talks about. But also we need to be extremely aware, a point that Bernie points out, when we say that there is a kind of presence of technology in India, or technology is kind of there, all there, we have to be very careful in making these kind of statements, because in recent studies that have been made, we know that internet penetration, internet reach, internet spread in India is around 36 to 38%. So we still have a large population which does not have access to very stable internets, what we call stable internet, which can support online education. We do not have a very stable rate of internet penetration in that sense. And in another survey that was conducted only recently, only 8% of children, school-going children, especially early age education children, have access to internet and a stable computer. So again, the stability of the internet, just because you have an internet, a 2G or a 3G or 4G on your phone, doesn't mean that can actually support online education, because we'll have to be careful in making those distinctions. I mean, you can have, of course, WhatsApp messages, which can produce a certain kind of a supplementary material for teaching, but it's not really teaching, because you need to have more substantial amounts of internet stability to have online education in some way or the other. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and that has again been talked about, and I was talking about in another webinar that I attended, was that probably the isolationism that we have right now in India, where colleges kind of work within their own institutional frameworks, universities work within their own institutional frameworks. So a college in Gandhinagar, for example, the place that I come from, may not have much interaction with a college in Surat or Ahmedabad or in Kanpur, where Dr. Tandon comes from. And we don't really know what the others are doing. So this kind of isolationism in terms of technology is also not helping matters too much. So one of the things that we might have to do after, especially when we are moving towards a more technology-enabled frameworks of teaching and learning, we need to think in terms of how can we share our resources. If we have teachers who are quite well versed in use of technology and have done technology enabled, are quite good with technology enabled environments, have used technology frameworks for teaching, etc., can that be shared? Can that be passed on? Can that be a part of a larger framework of resource sharing? So I think those kind of collaborative frameworks are probably going to probably going to be more useful in the future. And we need to kind of pool in our resources, not only pool in, probably also pull in our resources, because we don't have too many resources. And we know that budgets for education are kind of decreasing. So we have to be careful in how we pool in these resources and how we support teachers in this blended mode, where some teachers help the others, or some institutions which are a bit more funded, a bit have more resources, can help others who are less funded or have less resources. Probably that kind of a collaborative effort will work rather than kind of isolationism that is operative right now. I think that's how it's going to work. I think that's the best way out.
Okay, so the collaborative work is the best way out. And the teachers can share the knowledge of technology and the resources with each other, right? Well, we all know that it is still unclear as to when exactly we'll be able to come out of this crisis. But for sure, we will come out soon. However, even after this COVID-19 is gone, things will have changed a lot. Mr. Reinerson, what do you see as the future of higher education in the United States after the pandemic?
Well, certainly, I think we can all agree that higher education will change, and probably change dramatically after the COVID-19 crisis. There will be more and more of our instructors who will become literate in delivery of online education as we train instructors and provide professional development. And our students will become more literate in online education as they take more and more courses. Unfortunately, the impacts that we'll have long-term on higher education, I think, will be economic and financial. Here in California, our community college system of two-year colleges, of which I'm a part of, is looking at a $2 billion cut starting after July 1st for the next fiscal year. What that will mean is that we will need to cancel literally 1,000 courses at our university that we will no longer to be offered to students. So access to education, because of the financial impacts, I think is going to become more and more difficult. And classes will become larger, and certainly as online classes are offered, we can serve more students with a professor than you can in a classroom. So that'll be an impact in the way things are delivered. But it's the college, the full college experience that I am worried will change, and I hope that we can eventually get our colleges back to that. There are things like college athletics that are very important to students, and that are things that engage students to stay in education. In the United States, college football, college basketball, women's sports are very important part of the college experience. And that will dramatically change at our universities, at least until there's a vaccine and we can assemble in groups again. The on-campus clubs, our student government, our clubs that bring like-minded students together and get them inspired to stay in college and to continue learning and to study together. That experience is lost when we go to online courses and our campus